Before Guadalcanal, before Iwo Jima, before the American war machine kicked into high gear in the Pacific, there was Wake Island, a tiny horseshoe-shaped coral atoll in the middle of the ocean, and the site of one of the most stirring early battles of World War II. In 1942, just months after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Hollywood brought this heroic stand to the big screen in a film simply titled Wake Island. Wake Island, directed by John Farrow and released in August 1942, was among the first American war films made during World War II. And it wasn't just about entertainment. It was a rallying cry. The movie dramatized the real-life defense of Wake Island in December 1941, where a small contingent of U.S. Marines, naval personnel, and civilian contractors held off a vastly superior Japanese invasion force for over 2 weeks. Filmed and released just 8 months after the actual battle, Wake Island was one of the first patriotic war dramas to capture the mood of a nation reeling from Pearl Harbor and yearning for stories of American heroism. It was a massive box office success and nominated for 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. So what makes this film so powerful and so important to its time? The story of Wake Island follows a classic war movie trajectory, brave underdogs standing against impossible odds. It's based loosely on the actual battle but dramatized with fictionalized characters. Our central figure is Major Geoffrey Caton, played by Brian Donlevy, a tough and seasoned Marine officer sent to take command of the garrison at Wake. He's no-nonsense, hard-edged, and committed to shaping his men into a fighting force. Opposing him, at first anyway, is Shad McCloskey Robert Preston, a wisecracking civilian contractor helping to build the island's defenses. Their early antagonism gives the film some grit and character development before the real war kicks off. Then we meet Lieutenant Bruce Cameron, played by MacDonald Carey, a fresh-faced, idealistic Navy officer, and Private Randall, a comic relief Marine always getting into trouble. It's a classic Hollywood formula: different personalities, different backgrounds, all united by war. The first act of the film sets up the men's day-to-day lives on Wake Island, with heat, boredom, and constant tension building under the surface. The audience knows what's coming, even if the characters don't. Then comes December 7th, 1941. The Japanese attack Pearl Harbor. Communication breaks down. The war is on. On December 8th, the Japanese bomb Wake Island. The Marines, led by Caton, scramble to defend the airstrip and radio towers. The tension is palpable, and this is where Wake Island shines, not with flashy special effects, but with pure storytelling. As the siege continues, the film shows the defenders' growing desperation. Supplies run low, the enemy grows bolder, the Americans are cut off but refuse to give in. Caton's leadership becomes even more critical, and Donlevy gives a standout performance, portraying the strain of command with quiet power. He has to inspire the men while dealing with injuries, broken communications, and the knowledge that no help is coming. What's remarkable is how Wake Island balances realism with patriotism. Unlike many wartime propaganda films, it doesn't sugarcoat the situation. These men are outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. But it's that very hopelessness that makes their stand heroic. Eventually, the Japanese launch a full-scale invasion. The defenders resist with everything they have: machine guns, grenades, fists if necessary. They take down enemy landing boats. Planes are shot out of the sky. The final scenes are wrenching. Caton, wounded and exhausted, orders the last of his men to hold until the end. As Japanese forces overwhelm the island, the screen fades to black, not with victory, but with valiant defeat. A narrator closes the film with stirring words: "These men died for their country. They did not die in vain." It's somber, powerful, and, especially in 1942, deeply moving. Let's talk real history. The real Battle of Wake Island occurred from December 8 to December 23, 1941. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japanese forces attempted to seize Wake, but were repelled in their first attempt, the only time in World War II that an amphibious assault was turned back by shore-based defenders. Marine Major James Devereaux and Commander Winfield Cunningham led roughly 450 Marines, 70 Navy personnel, and over 1,000 civilian workers. They managed to destroy several Japanese ships and shoot down dozens of enemy aircraft using outdated equipment and sheer grit. But on December 23, the Japanese returned with overwhelming force. After brutal hand-to-hand combat and heavy losses on both sides, the Americans were forced to surrender. 98 civilians were later executed by the Japanese in one of the war's many atrocities. The remaining prisoners were sent to labor camps. The island was not retaken until the end of the war. The defenders of Wake Island were hailed as heroes back home. Their stand became symbolic, a Pacific version of the Alamo. And that's exactly the spirit the film captured. Wake Island wasn't just a movie. It was a morale booster. Released when the war was still in its terrifying early phase, it gave Americans something to rally around. It showed that even in defeat, American fighting men would not go quietly. It painted the U.S. Marines as tough, loyal, and indomitable, a legacy that stuck for decades. The film's quick production meant some historical accuracy was sacrificed. Characters were fictionalized. The battle's grim aftermath was softened. And like many war films of the time, it portrayed the Japanese in stereotypical, one-dimensional ways, common in 1940s cinema, but difficult to watch today. Still, Wake Island resonated. It received 4 Oscar nominations and inspired a slew of other war films. It paved the way for later classics like Guadalcanal Diary, They Were Expendable, and eventually Sands of Iwo Jima. Director John Farrow, a veteran himself, brought a sense of realism and urgency to the project. The tight editing, practical effects, and unrelenting pace give the movie a documentary-like feel in parts, especially during the battle scenes. The cinematography, shot in stark black and white, emphasizes the bleakness of the situation. There's dust, sweat, and chaos, not glamour. You can feel the isolation of the atoll, the endless sea surrounding it, and the brutal heat. It's not a place of glory. It's a place of survival. Today, Wake Island might not be as well remembered as Saving Private Ryan or The Longest Day, but its legacy is no less important. It stands as an artifact of its time, a raw, patriotic, and sobering reflection of how America coped with the early months of World War II. Its success helped launch the war movie genre into the mainstream, and for a generation of Americans, it was a first look at what the war might cost. The film doesn't flinch from showing sacrifice, but it never lets go of hope. There's also something timeless about it. Watching it today, we recognize the formula: tough leader, comic relief, underdog heroes, but we also see how sincerely it was made. Wake Island wasn't built to sell tickets. It was built to honor those who fought. If you're a fan of classic cinema, wartime history, or just great storytelling, Wake Island is a must-watch. It might not have the visceral impact of modern war films, but it makes up for that with emotional resonance and narrative efficiency. It runs a tight 88 minutes. It doesn't waste time on melodrama, and it doesn't try to rewrite the outcome. The men of Wake Island didn't win, but they didn't lose their honor either. For the American public in 1942, that was enough. In an era of high-tech effects and sprawling CGI battlefields, there's something grounding about returning to films like Wake Island. It reminds us where the war film genre began, on real stories, told with urgency, and with a nation's morale hanging in the balance. So if you're exploring the early days of Hollywood's wartime storytelling, or you're simply looking for a powerful underdog story based on real courage, do yourself a favor and revisit Wake Island. It's more than a film. It's a time capsule and a tribute